Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com.
Here's his cell number.
Good morning and welcome to the Yuba Water Agency Board of Directors meeting for Tuesday, July 18th, 2023. Just want to start the meeting by noting that a couple of weeks ago, the agency suffered a huge loss with the death of our longest serving employee, Arnold DeLima, our senior operator. Arnold served the agency since 2006 and trained all of the operators that we have today. So we will be adjourning this meeting later today in honor of him. And so I just wanted to let everyone know that. So we'll start this morning with roll call.
Director Vasquez.
Here.
Director Blazier.
Here.
Director Pure.
Yes.
Director Bradford.
Here.
Director Messick.
Yeah, here.
Director Matthews.
Here.
Director Bishop.
Okay, Director Bishop, will you lead us in the pledge, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, next up is public comment. Mandy.
Public comment is an opportunity for members of the public to address the Board of Directors on any subject matter that is not on the meeting agenda and is within the board subject matter jurisdiction. Public comment periods are limited to 3 minutes per person, and the total amount of time for public comment is 15 minutes. Persons participating by way of video conference or teleconference shall ensure their audio is muted at all times, except when the board chair announces public comment periods. At those designated times, members of the public wishing to speak shall enable their audio and state their name for the record. When multiple members of the public wish to speak, the clerk will determine the order of speakers and announce their names accordingly. To ensure proper conduct, the board reserves the right to mute the audio and video of any member of the public violating generally accepted principles and decorum of official public meetings.
Great, thank you. Is there any public comment in the room? Okay, any on Zoom? Okay, seeing no public comment, we will move on to consent items. There's 3 items on consent. Any board question or comment on the consent items?
Move to approve.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Is there any public comment on the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Next, we'll move on to discussion items, starting with item 4, which is consider recommending approval of amendment number 4 to the agreement with Yuba County for a 12-month cash flow loan in the amount of $9 million to prepay the county's annual unfunded liability portion of CalPERS payment for fiscal year 23-24. Good morning, Curtis.
Good morning. Thank you for your time. No, don't worry. There's not an hour-long PowerPoint to go through this. Yeah, but thank you. This is a great agenda item that has a great deal of benefit for the people of Yuba County. What this is a cash flow loan from the water agency to Yuba County. It allows them to take advantage of the prepayment discount option for the CalPERS required annual payment towards unfunded liability. To make the monthly payments instead of the prepayment discount, there's roughly a 7%, if not larger than 7% interest expense that the county would pay to CalPERS. This arrangement would allow them to match the county treasury. County treasury has been going up over the last year. All interest rates have been going up, but we're still around 2.5%. So there's still roughly about a 5% delta paying us instead of CalPERS. So that's representing cost savings to Yuba County. We estimate that's going to be around $400,000. So instead of interest expense, the county can use that for other services. So with that, happy to answer any questions, but this is, I think, the 6th year that we've been doing this. It's been a successful program. The loan is paid in full by the end of the fiscal year.
Thank you, Curtis. Any questions from the board?
No, I would move that we accept it. And I'm always aware that people are concerned that there's 5 supervisors on our board and only 2 non-supervisors. And I think it's appropriate that someone like myself make the motion rather than the supervisor.
I'll second.
I think that's great, Charlie. Thank you. Thank you. So I have a first and a second. Any public comment on the item? Don't see any in the room. None on Zoom.
I have a comment on it, Gary. So I was just in the territorial dispatch, there was a long article that made it sound like the agency's loaning the county the money and the county's never paying it back. And I just wonder if the county PR person or the agency PR person could put something out there to let the people know what this is all about. That's actually saving the taxpayers money, and that is getting paid back. So just like a request.
I think that's a great idea.
Get some PR out there, because most of the people in my district rely on the territorial dispatch, and it was pretty much of a false article.
Okay. Looks like Dee Dee's on it. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thanks.
Any additional board comment?
For assistance, 9 million in the past, it's been as high as 15.
That's right. So it had gone up until this year. But the actuary report that's used to come up with this payment amount is still looking at the CalPERS fiscal year. They had about 20% in interest income on their investments. It lags about a year. So that reduced the liability for all members in the CalPERS program. So this payment is lower. The agency's payment was also lower. We do know that in the subsequent fiscal year, CalPERS lost a little over 6%. So next year's unfunded liability payment will be higher than this one, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Through the chair,
Yes.
would it be all right for staff report to also include in there the difference, the savings for the county by doing this?
Yeah, absolutely.
It slides with Lou on his radio show too, and he's just doesn't bring up the fact that we actually save money by borrowing this.
Absolutely. I can add some more context to that 400,000 because it's saving roughly 400,000 in the fiscal year.
Yeah, if you put that in the staff report, it would be something we could use to educate the public.
Great. Thank you. Okay.
Call
Further board comment. We have a first and a second, and I believe I already asked for public comment and there was none. So with that, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Chris. Okay, next we're going to move on to item 5. Approve additional grant funding to Yuba County in the amount of $396,000, which is the estimated amount needed over the previous $15 million for lost local cost share funding awarded on June 7th, 2022, and adopt resolution 2023-10, increasing the total of previously awarded grant funds by essentially $2.3 million to Yuba County as a local cost share, leveraging funds for a comprehensive drainage project in Olive First. So, morning, Dan.
Good morning, Chairman Bradford, members of the board. My name is Dan Peterson. For the next 13 days, the Director of Public Works for Yuba County. I'm excited to come before you again today. I understand and apologize for the fact that I came before you previously on this same subject, but the state moved the goalposts, and I'm going to take advantage of it if possible. So just a little bit of history. Everybody understands that the communities of Linda, West Linda, Olivehurst, Arboga are historic gold rush communities. When they were constructed, they were never engineered. There was never a true engineered drainage system installed. It was pretty much, okay, we're going to have a standard cross section with roadside ditches, and the ditches were really intended to keep water off the roadway. And as we have experienced year after year, they have proven insufficient. Because of the generosity of this board, we were able to leverage funding from the state for a massive project in the community of West Linda. To date, the biggest project we've ever attempted in public works, and that's a $28 million project. So when this LTCAP program came out, the Local Transportation Climate Adaptation Program came out. They said, hey, we'll give you up to $30 million in grant funding for infrastructure mitigation measures to accommodate changes in climate change. That is exactly what we have been doing. The historic drainage system does not work, probably never did work adequately. Thank goodness that most of West Linda and Linda is sandy. Unfortunately, Olivehurst, the farther south you go, the higher the clay content, the worse it drains. So with the changes in the shape, duration, frequency of storms, and I apologize, I'm a hydrologist at heart, so this is fun to me. With the changes that we are seeing, we truly are getting worse and more frequent and longer duration localized flooding in the community of Olivehurst and unfortunately in Arboga as well. So this project, which is truly a repackaged Safe Routes to School project we had submitted previously under a different grant program, is a perfect fit. It's in perfect alignment with the goals, mission, objectives of this LTCAP program. I contacted the folks who run the program and they said, you know what, we love this project. This is fantastic. There's a lot of local support. There's been a lot of public outreach, which has expanded over years. And if you can come up with the 20% local cost share, we think this has got a good probability of success. At that time, the maximum grant amount, once again, was $30 million. So after I came before the board and requested that the Yuba Water Agency leverage this funding and provide the 20% local cost share, the state then came back and said, you know what, we want some really transformative projects. And we're also worried that we're not going to get enough people applying for money, and we want to actually put this money out there and make some changes in the communities. So they bumped the maximum award up to $50 million. So I went back and talked to everybody I know in the Transportation Commission, down at SACOG, and in different agencies. And pretty much the universal response I got back is, well, there's a sweet spot. If you can come in between $35 and $40 million on your grant request, that's going to be what they're looking at giving. They really don't want projects all the way up to 50 million, but there might be one or two that, just to make it a truly standalone comprehensive project, it has to be that big. But we'd prefer you keep it in that $38 million mark. So we went back, re-examined the system, decided which components would strategically best be added that would work with this as a standalone project. And as the map shows that was provided to you, the most strategic way of addressing the drainage in Olivehurst is to hit the northern and western portion first, because the drainage in Olivehurst pretty much goes from north to south, from east to west. There's a large canal that runs down along the west side of Olivehurst along the railroad tracks, and most of the water ends up being transported over there. So we're going to start at the northern portion, and we're going to make improvements to the canal at the same time. And then that canal drains under McGowan Parkway and over to the South McGowan Basin. So what we've done then is bumped this project up from what was initially a $28 million project to a $48 million project. And then with the local cost share, it drops the grant request down to a little over 38 million, keeping it in that sweet spot. So once again, to make a long story short, I'm requesting that the Yuba Water Agency increase their previous allotted local cost share of $756,000 up to, and I know this is a big number, $9,938,000. And this money will then leverage $38,540,000 in state funding, so we can actually put in the first ever formal engineered drainage system and storm drain system, plus, by the way, curbs, gutters, and sidewalks and class 3 bike routes for almost a third of the community of Olivehurst. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments from the board?
So moved.
Just super excited.
Jump right out there.
I'd like to second the motion, but again, on the same understanding that we are in the water business and this fits our mission. And it also is something that we're giving back to the community. I think it's a project that we should be proud of.
Okay. Any additional board comment before we go to public comment? Okay. Any public comment on this item? Okay. I don't see any in the room or any online. Willie. Yeah.
So Dan, thank you for all your work on this. It takes champions to take advantage of these grant opportunities, and the partnership with the Yuba Water Agency and the county is wonderful. And Dan's been a leader in that. He retires in 13 days, right?
Yes.
And I'm sure there will be someone to fill his shoes after he retires and see this project through. But this is like Director Matthew said, this is a wonderful use of the agency resources. You know, these are the types of things that the founders of the agency were envisioning over 50 years ago. And I just want to thank Dan for putting it together and being a champion of this project. It's great. And actually traveling through that part of the county and my normal routine business and seeing this construction and seeing the economic benefit of those construction workers spending money in Olivehurst and in the Linda area, that's another economic benefit to this county. So it is truly a success that we should be proud of. Thanks for that comment, Director.
Great, thank you. So I agree, it's an amazing project, and I'm glad that we're able to support it, and hopefully we'll be successful in getting the grant, and it can be life-changing for that part of Olivehurst. So with that, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next we'll move on to item 6. Consider approval of a grant up to $487,000 to the Linda County Water District for impacts to the district infrastructure in relation to the Yuba County's grant-funded Cedar Lane Safe Routes to School project. Morning, Terry.
Hi, Terry Daly. I just want to explain that Linda project that Dan was just talking about, it's a great project. It has caused some impacts to Linda County Water District, sorry. And Brian Davis, their GM, is here to talk to you about that. I want to give you the heads up that for the grant that Dan Peterson is applying for now, he's already in contact with OPUD, Olivehurst Public Utility District, to anticipate any impacts to OPUD. And hopefully those impacts will be in this grant application. So, all yours, Brian.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Morning, Brian.
So yeah, my name is Brian Davis. I'm General Manager of the Linda County Water District. First off, I do want to say we support wholeheartedly the Cedar Lane Safe Routes to School project and any attempt to improve drainage in the community of Linda, as overflow of drainage does directly affect our sewer system. Related to the project of Cedar Lane Safe Routes to School, there's in order to make a corridor available for the storm drainage, there's a fair amount of water and wastewater pipelines and infrastructure that need to be moved in order to make that corridor available. And that was included as part of the bid for the project, but not included in the funding. And when bids were opened, it was anticipated that our district would need to participate with $600,000 of costs that we had kind of not budgeted and was unforeseen, but yet required for this type of project. So we backed up, kind of circled the wagons, met with the contractor, tried to renegotiate some of the scope there and help better define what needed to be done. And then we identified portions of the project that our own staff could perform. And at the end of all that, there was still about $480,000 that needed to be covered to complete that project. We reached out to the water agency to kind of help us account for this unfunded cost related to the Cedar Lane Safe Route to School project. And we ended up right here in front of the water agency asking for a little bit of help in covering this cost.
Great, thank you. Any board comment or questions on this item? Okay, seeing none, any public comment or questions on this item? Okay, with none, then I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Okay, have a first. Is there a second?
Oh.
Okay. I think Don seconded. So all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next, we'll move on to item 7, receive a state legislative update. Morning, Adam.
Chair Bradford, directors, good morning. Adam Robin, Government Relations Manager and Special Counsel. This is a state legislative update. As you know, we periodically update the board as things develop in Sacramento. So this morning, I'll just be briefly covering some of the issues that we've been engaged on in Sacramento and talk a little bit about what we expect to see happen through the remainder of the 2023 state legislative session. This first slide is something you've seen before. This is just a reminder of sort of how we engage in Sacramento. First, we actively monitor legislative and regulatory proposals. We engage when necessary to promote and defend the agency's interests. And then finally, we're always working to establish and maintain relationships with policymakers, key stakeholders, and others in Sacramento and in Washington, D.C. So this is just a quick overview of everything we'll be covering today. The first slide, the next slide you'll see relates to policy bills. These are the substantive changes proposed to state law. This is most of the work that the legislature does. These are changes to things like water rights, water management, flood protection, and other issues where we're engaged. Do want to spend some time talking about the state budget and bond proposals. The state budget in recent years has become a really critical venue, not only for changes in how the state spends money, but also for how certain policy measures are enacted. That's a significant change in how business has historically been done. But it's critically important, and it's something that we've been working hard on. And then finally, just want to talk a little bit about issues and matters that we're tracking as we move forward. This is the most substantive slide today. I want to cover each of these bills briefly. I just described to you what they're about, how we've engaged, and where we are currently on each of these bills, starting with water rights. This year has really been noteworthy in that we've had more substantive, more significant policy proposals related to water rights than we've seen in some years. These are the three big ones. AB 460, which would have authorized the State Water Resources Control Board to issue interim relief orders to enforce a variety of existing state laws, as well as concepts in state law. So interim relief orders could be issued if somebody failed to comply with the terms of a permit or license. They could be issued for failure to obtain water quality objectives. They could also be issued by the State Water Resources Control Board for purported violations of Article 10, Section 2 of the state constitution, which deals with waste and unreasonable use. This represented a significant proposed expansion of the state board's authority. The second proposal, AB 1337, would have dealt with how the State Water Board could issue curtailments to water rights under any basis or claim of right. That's also a significant expansion of the state board's existing authority, as well as it would have authorized them to issue implementing orders. And then finally, SB 389 related to the investigation and determination of water rights. It could require a water rights holder to make significant amounts of evidence available to the water board, and then, as originally introduced, would have allowed the water board to make a corresponding determination as to whether a water right were valid or not. These bills attracted a lot of interest and, frankly, a lot of opposition from a statewide coalition that included business interests, agricultural interests, and water interests. I'm pleased, Yuba Water Agency, for our part, we engaged in coalition with that larger group to oppose these measures as they move through the process. I am pleased to report that as of last Monday, AB 460 and AB 1337 failed to clear a critical legislative deadline, which is the second House Policy Committee deadline. So they made it through the Assembly. They stopped in the Senate policy committees where ultimately they weren't heard. AB 389 has cleared the second House Policy Committee deadline. But again, pleased to report there that really significant changes have been made to that measure. Since that bill was amended on July 6th, I actually haven't updated the slide. It no longer relates to determination of water rights. At this point, the bill in print would authorize the water board to procure information related to a water right and to get a better understanding of the basis of claim. In its current form, it would allow the water board to issue a trespass if they determined based on that evidence that an underlying water right was not valid, but it represents a really significant improvement in that bill. There's still work to be done there, but given where we started, I think we've seen some really positive developments on each of these measures. Moving to the next item here, water management. AB 30 is a bill that probably looks and hopefully sounds familiar. Last year, Yuba Water Agency sponsored AB 2078. This is I always call it kind of a modest but important bill. It really serves to emphasize the important role that our growing understanding of atmospheric rivers, the research, the insights that we've gained operationally, how they play an important role into managing our system better for water supply purposes, for flood control purposes. This is a bill that's, the Scripps Institution of Oceanography is playing a leading role in, and we're pleased to see this bill continuing to move forward. We've been part of the coalition supporting that measure. The next bill here is AB 754 by Assemblymember Pappen. This is a bill that would require urban, or relevant to us, agricultural water suppliers in updating their agricultural water management plan to include a target reservoir water supply storage curve. This concept is problematic. It basically requires you to plan to operate your reservoir to optimize water supply availability for three important purposes: water supply, ecosystem needs, as defined in the bill, and water quality needs. Unfortunately, what's left out of that construct are the other important benefits for which we manage our reservoir, namely flood control, hydropower generation, and recreation. We've engaged in really positive, constructive conversations with the author's office in explaining why that construct really doesn't work for reservoirs like ours and others around the state. There's a unified coalition in the opposition to this bill. I'll say what's good about this bill is that the teeth have been taken out of it. Previously, if you deviated from your curve, this curve that you're required to develop under the bill, and you, for example, experienced a 10% shortage relative where you were on the curve, you would be required to implement demand response actions, basically conservation actions for your customers or the folks who benefit from the operation of your project in a corresponding amount. That's simply not how we manage the system. We have groundwater resources that we manage conjunctively with our surface water resources. A whole host of reasons that doesn't make sense. But at this point, there are no consequences for failure to meet the requirements of the curve. You basically just have to go through the planning exercise of including this curve in your plan, and that's it. We continue to oppose the bill. All of our statewide associations continue to oppose the bill. It's not clear whether this is going to become law, but we continue to work on it. Finally, the last measure I'll describe here is AB 345 by Assemblymember Wilson. This is a bill that would authorize the Department of Water Resources to make advance payment for flood protection and multi-benefit projects around the state. Currently, DWR can't do anything but reimburse project proponents for work. This would authorize the state to actually advance payment to help hopefully move some projects forward. We do work on a wide variety of other measures, whether it's informing and supporting our associations or through other means. For example, there are bills on forest health this year that we're working on, but I think that the 6 bills described here on the slide are really where we've spent most of our time and energy in Sacramento over the past year. If there are questions or thoughts, I'm happy to take them at any point, or I can just press on. All right, I will move forward. Second to last slide here. The state budget, obviously critically important. The state of California these days has a budget in excess of $300 billion annually. A lot of substantive policy gets developed through the budget process. That's problematic and frankly difficult to manage from an advocate standpoint because that process is very closed door compared to the regular policy bill process. Nonetheless, happy to report a success this year. For a number of years, Yuba Water Agency has been coordinating and helping to lead a statewide coalition in support of a new state funding source for dam safety and climate resilience projects like the ARC spillway. Around the state, there are other dam safety projects where agencies are struck with these tremendous costs for projects that not only benefit their customers, but benefit Californians broadly. So we've, helped to define the need for this sort of funding source for a couple of years now. This year, Governor Newsom included it in his proposed budget. We're pleased that the legislature not only carried that proposal forward, but actually financed it to a greater degree than the administration originally proposed. So as of July, we now have a dam safety and climate resilience local assistance program in state law. We have $100 million in funding this year to help make that program, real. And it's significant that some of the statewide bond proposals that are currently working their way through the legislature, there's 4 of them, they're listed here. All of them include significant funding for these purposes, ranging from $400 million on the low end up to $1 billion on the high end. We do expect conversations about natural resources or water or climate resilience bond, whatever they ultimately want to call it, to continue into the fall. The coalescing opinion now is that something is likely to be placed on the November 2024 ballot for California voters to consider. Finally, just looking ahead briefly, when I last came before you in March, we talked about how almost a third of the legislature between both houses are new members. That's been a significant change this year. There's member education. There's a lot of new priorities. There's a lot of new ideas. There's a lot of old ideas that are somehow new again that have been brought up. So it's been a dynamic session in a lot of senses. I think what hadn't changed at that point was legislative leadership. You had the longest serving speaker in some years in Anthony Rendon from Los Angeles. You have long-term speaker, Senate President Pro Tem, and Tony Atkins, who's on the right there. We have a new speaker, which is Mr. Rivas, Robert Rivas, who's on the left side of the screen there. And I think what's noteworthy, when I think about Speaker Rivas's role, is that he comes from Hollister. He grew up in unincorporated San Benito County. It's the first time in a long time that somebody with a rural perspective has been in a legislative leadership position in Sacramento. Farm Bureau and others have close working established relationships with the new speaker that, it's hard to know what those will yield in terms of how how issues related to water and agriculture will be handled in Sacramento. But I think it is noteworthy at the beginning of his speakership that he brings a different perspective to the role than others. I mentioned President Pro Tem Atkins earlier. She is termed out in 2024. There's no real timeline for replacement for Senate leadership, but in the next year, we will see that heat up as well. So it's always interesting to see where legislative leaders come from, the priorities they bring to their positions, and so on. These are really key roles because these are the key negotiators in the state budget. They dictate the kind of flow of business through the respective chambers, and they do things like appoint committee chairs, which really, have substantive effect on the laws that we see being made in Sacramento. And then finally, I threw water bonds on here again as well. We do expect to see conversations related to a potential water resources, climate resilience, potentially flood bond over the next year. So that's my update today. Appreciate the time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Could you give us some insight of how you thought our spillway and the legislature, are they going to be able to act in time to help us, or are we too far ahead of the curve?
It's an excellent question. So the state budget takes effect immediately. So that program and those resources are now available to the Department of Water Resources. We haven't wasted any time. We've already engaged with DWR staff to understand what their plan is for standing up that program. We do anticipate that they are going to develop formal program guidelines, but I think there's a shared interest across all of our coalition in seeing that program hit the ground running, get those resources out the door as soon as possible. Long answer to your short question. I think it remains to be seen, obviously based on a number of factors, but we're not wasting any time in encouraging DWR to get that money out the door.
Any additional comments or questions from the board?
Through the chair. I apologize, Adam, if I missed this, but the governor's been talking about a bill to fast track some environmental type projects. Did you already mention that, or?
I didn't mention that. So the governor really emphasized an infrastructure package. I think it was called the Build California Faster Act. It was a series of infrastructure proposals. Those have been approved at this point. Some significant changes were made in the course of their development. Based on our analysis of those proposals, they don't really directly benefit any of the projects or initiatives that the agency's heading up at this point. But that infrastructure package championed by the governor did ultimately become law. So
it could potentially move up the timeline on Daguerre or not?
Based as it's currently configured, I'm not sure we see that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to manager's report.
Oh, thanks, Director Bradford. So it's been 5 weeks since we've had a board meeting, so I've missed you all, but here we are. I bring that up because I think my report's a little longer than normal because we have some things to cover, but generally everything's going well with the agency. One item not in your written report, hard copy here, is our Director of Power Systems had another career opportunity last month or two and has left the agency. So it's left us a leadership gap up at the plant. And in talking with Terry and the director team, I think the best thing for us to do is to sit back and leave that unfilled for a little while. And so I'm going to go ahead and act as power system director for about 6 weeks. I'm going to spend Mondays. I've been spending Mondays up at the plant and just get a sense of the culture, get a sense of the talent needed to fill that role. Our culture has significantly changed the last several years. Our past power systems director was here for 3 years, did a wonderful job, but we need to know what kind of talent we need to hire for the next power system director. So I'll spend 6 weeks up there. We'll determine what we need. We'll solicit and advertise for that position and get it filled over the next 6 months or so. So I just want to let you know that I will be spending Mondays up at the plant. It's been great so far. The team's wonderful at this point. Everything's operating well, but I wanted to let you know that. The other thing is a little bit of a cleanup on your consent agenda. You approved the emergency for the Ostrom Road repair. That project is nearly complete. You may have seen on social media that the road's back opened and things went well. It's not completely closed out. They're still demobbing, and we still have to do the final payments and wrap up on the budget. So at the next board meeting, we will come back with a summary of how that project went. So I just wanted to let you know that. Otherwise, I was up at the reservoir on Sunday evening, let my dogs swim, and major recreation use going on over the weekend at the lake, as anticipated, given the weather. Really busy in the parking lot, and tough place to find a place to park. I went in 6 p.m. hoping everyone would have left by then, but there's a lot of use going on, and it was great. The surface of the reservoir is still pretty high. It's at 1943, so it's 12 feet below max pool, which at Bullards is still significantly high, and we have our plan to drop it down for our end of year storage target at the end of September at 705,000 acre feet. So all that's going well. We're obviously generating with that water as we deliver it for irrigation and environmental uses. All is going well there. All of our units are online and operating as planned and designed. The mini hydro, however, is on an outage and has been on an outage for several months due to exciter repair, but the crew is now working on that and getting it back online. And as I've stated before, it's a small generating unit that doesn't bring a significant amount of revenue, so it has been a low priority or not the highest priority for work. But now that we have a gap in our overall maintenance plans, we can get to fixing that exciter. The maintenance crew, other than working on the mini hydro, is just performing their normal routine maintenance and plant checks and maintaining recreation facilities and gearing up for this fall's outage season. There's a significant effort to improve the road that goes from Marysville Road down to the Penstock Portal. You'll remember a couple years ago, we bought some property between Marysville Road and the Penstock Portal, and we've used that road in the past under permission from the former landowner. And now that we own it, we're doing significant repair there because we have a lot of material to deliver during the tunnel outage. So that work is underway and going well. It's anticipated to be completed by the end of this calendar year. And we broke ground on the power system headquarters. And if you drive Marysville Road through Organ House, you're going to see a significant change. All that they've done so far in the last week is clear the vegetation and start the rough grading, but it looks like a different place. It's got a fence all the way around it for security and safety, but it's basically showing you what our footprint will look like in the future. We've had a major heat event over the last several days. The overall generation market was, we went through what I would consider our spring lull, where in a year like this, there's significant hydro generation and the demand is low because of the mild temperatures. But now that the snow melt has basically stopped and we got significant demand with the heat waves, the prices have gone up. We're taking advantage of that, obviously, but it's normal anticipated operation. Things are going well there. You'll see a new style of graph in your hard copy report here, and it basically shows an annual filling of New Bullards Bar compared to our max pool. So that's an interesting read. And then you also have a multi-year graph that shows where we were in 2021, our lowest point, and then a year and a half later where we peaked, which would have been this spring. So just informational, a different way of looking at how our reservoir is operated. There's another, we're in the significant, call it a heat wave over the weekend. We're kind of in you can believe it, like it's kind of a little decrease in temperatures the next couple of days, and then we'll be back at, over 105, around 110 in the Sacramento Valley. And that's going to persist for, as we see it, a couple weeks. As I've reported in the past, we have the conditions in the Pacific Ocean have shifted to an El Nino pattern. Generally, El Nino provides significant warmer storms in the wintertime, not necessarily snowpack generating storms, but significant precipitation, warm precipitation. However, you'll look on page 8 of your hard copy report, you'll see the map on the bottom shows kind of that area that's impacted by those warm storms. And we're just above that line that shows, a wetter winter season. And so we're kind of in the equal chances of wet and dry season. So we're right in that part of the country that is kind of on the edge of, a water supply benefit from an El Nino versus, average conditions or even dry conditions. So we'll just see how this winter plays out. Okay, now into the detailed things we've done over the past 5 weeks since I spoke to you last. A few weeks ago, a letter was sent to Governor Newsom that was signed by 20 signatories from the Yuba-Feather region, including Yuba-Sutter and Butte counties, reclamation districts from across the region, tribal representatives, NGOs, and community groups expressing the support for our proposed ARC spillway. The letter focuses on the state's acknowledgments of the benefits of the ARC spillway and the updated Central Valley Flood Protection Plan, and encourages the state to coordinate and contribute technical support, funding, and other resources to help move that project forward. The letter is a strong demonstration of regional support for the project, and we appreciate all of the signatories' shared interest in our project. In communications, the long-awaited New York Times Magazine article hit the internet on June 22nd and was included in print issue of the Sunday newspaper on June 25th, and you all have a copy. You should have a copy today. The article takes a critical look at how extreme weather could impact California's flood control infrastructure and highlighted us as an example of an agency proactively preparing for more extreme storms with forecast-informed reservoir operations in our planned atmospheric river control spillway. The Appeal Democrat and YubaNet ran our announcement about the grant to Circle to get more Yuba County students on the salmon expedition field trips. The Appeal, YubaNet, and several fisheries and conservation-focused publications also covered a grant awarded to the South Yuba River Citizens League to complete the 43-acre Upper Rose Bar restoration project, a cooperative project between us and Circle. I just want to let you know that that project was underway before we purchased that property in Smartsville, and we supported its ongoing effort once we did purchase that project. And it's the first phase of what is anticipated to be a 3 or 4 phase long-term habitat restoration project on that property. So when we brought you that proposal to purchase that property, we didn't have a specific long-term plan, and we're still developing that. But this is just showing you that the first phase of restoration is going to occur under this grant that Circle obtained, but in partnership with us. And the primary product of this grant is just an access road to the river. There's going to be some habitat installed in the river itself as a part of that grant, but we're going to gain the access road needed to complete the next phases of that project. Director Bradford penned an op-ed in the Sacramento Bee in partnership with RCRC about how we are proactively trying to reduce flood risk, the risk of flooding in our communities. Our summer quarterly newsletter went out at the end of June and is now going to more than 1,800 subscribers. I also want to point out that most of our meetings, including this one, I believe, are streamed live on Yuba-Sutter Live on their Facebook page. And that's just in case you didn't already know that. And July 14th and 15th, we sponsored the Peach Festival and once again hosted a booth, as well as a screening of the Tricky Yuba out at the event. But this year, our film served as a cooling station as well, with a tent and misters to relieve visitors during the heat. I just also want to point out, I attended the Peach Festival and worked the booth for a few hours on Saturday morning. And this goes back to Dan Peterson's request for grant funding from the agency today. I had one really positive interaction with a resident of Olivehurst mentioning that specific grant program. I ended up spending about 20 minutes talking to this individual, and it was absolutely a positive interaction. And it started with him, basically telling me his interpretation of our original plans to do curbs, gutters, and sidewalks in Olivehurst. And he basically admitted that he was pessimistic about us being able to achieve that. And when I say us, it's us and our partnership with the county. But he was ecstatic that work was underway with the original grant funding from last year. And then he saw this specific agenda item on the agenda today that Dan addressed and was just totally encouraged that things are getting done out there. So I wanted to let you know that not only does the Peach Festival, show the community what we're doing, we also have these specific interactions with individuals. And I want to report that that was a really positive interaction. Director Fuhrer, that was for you. We have decided not to reschedule our planned groundbreaking ceremony at the new power systems facilities. After discussing it with the construction team, we missed the window of time where it would have worked well without being a nuisance to the crews or a safety hazard for the guests. Basically, you just have a big rough graded area now out there with equipment going, and it probably wouldn't be safe, or it wouldn't really show. It's not really groundbreaking. It's obvious that we broke ground and we're working. So we will do, instead, we will look at doing some small group site tours in the fall when it gets to a point where you can really see something. So coming up tomorrow, I'll be meeting with the 4-H summer camp of more than 50 students up at Bullards for a talk about how we manage water. On Thursday, we'll have a team out at the Oliver's Pool talking about water safety to guests. We are sponsoring the Happy Landings Lunch for new spouses at Beale Air Force Base on Friday. And lastly, we have a survey out in the community now. We're updating the survey last done in 2021 to understand our brand awareness among Yuba County residents and measuring the public's perception of the agency. In community impact and engagement on July 6th, in partnership with the Yuba County Development Team, we continued spreading the business development message of the value of living, working, and quality of life in Yuba County with representatives of Beale Air Force Base. We orchestrated a 5-hour bus tour of Yuba County and lunch at Sycamore Ranch through the leadership teams at Beale. The 12 commanders with human resources, contracting, resiliency, and headquarters were highly impressed with the housing market and the growth on the horizon. Plans are being made for a second career day to introduce spouses and partners to our businesses to hire while they're at Beale. I want to let you know, following that tour, I was out at another event at Beale, and I talked to some of the folks that attended that field tour, and it was super valuable for them to be led through the community by people that live and work in the community. And many people that work at Beale, without that interaction or that specific tour, wouldn't even know what we have here in Yuba County, and specifically wouldn't know what Yuba Water Agency and the county and others are doing to improve the quality of life in Yuba County. It may be in one condition now, but where we're trying to get to is the vision that we had to communicate to them, and they really appreciated that tour. And I got to thank Jackie for setting that up and managing that. Our next board meeting is on August 1st, and we'll also have an ABP meeting. That's it.
Great, thank you. Questions or comments from board members?
I wonder if you could think a little bit more on the tour you had, that you ought to include some members of the board, would be a positive interaction with new people coming to the community.
Are we talking the Beale tour that I just mentioned?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just thought.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. Was that a bus tour?
Yeah.
They used to do that. Matter of fact, I have been the speaker in front of the bus in the past. So,
thanks for volunteering.
Thanks for sponsoring Happy Landings. That's a really good program.
I have noticed also you didn't talk about any revenue on power generation rates during these heat waves.
The heat waves, the big heat wave over the weekend just happened. So I mentioned that the market has increased since our spring lull. I don't have final numbers on what the daily generation has been, but I'll have that at the next board meeting.
Thank you.
I also want to thank you for doing the tour with the 4-H kids. And I learned something, just I'm new at all this. When I call you to line something up like that, I need to let Mandy know. And Dee Dee.
You're a work in progress. Right? Great. Well, thank you for thanking me for something I haven't done yet. Hopefully it goes well.
Okay. Thank you, Willie. So next we'll move on to director's reports. We'll start with Director Bishop this week. Okay. Director Matthews.
I would say that the biggest, I don't want to call it a threat, but the biggest hurdle we have is our license. And I think that our manager has done an outstanding job of getting our license conditions by the last two agencies in front of them. And encourage everyone to try to move the process along, because it could be 1 or 2 years, or it could be 5 or 10 years. But as long as our license is not in our hands, there's always the worry that conditions could come about that we couldn't swallow. So I think that our license should be our highest priority.
Thank you. Director Messick?
So I just want to make a few comments on the Peach Festival because I was there working most of the time. I didn't make it to the agency booth, but the Yuba-Sutter Veterans Stand Down had nearly 600 pies left over, and a small group of us got in there Sunday and sold 850 pies at count. I was going to hit the agency up to see if they wanted to buy leftover pies, but we sold them all Sunday, and now I'm taking pre-orders. So if anybody wants to buy some pies, I think like today's going to be the deadline to turn in. I have 250 here orders to turn in. Anybody wants more, let me know.
Thank you. Director Fuhrer?
I did make it to the water agency booth, and you guys put your kids to work there. It was fantastic. So I showed up, and one of the employees' children started walking me through the process of how important Bullard's Bar is, what a great place it is for recreation, not knowing who I was. And it was very entertaining as the other staff there we all laughed together. So it was a great time. You guys did a good job on the booth. I attended a Zoom meeting for the Orville Advisory meeting, Orville Dam Advisory Board. And I've been pleasantly surprised actually about the progress there. The DWR, when I first got there, definitely seemed to be on track to do a certain type of presentation, and they have adapted and become more responsive to some of the citizens' concerns. And so they've been incorporating aspects that at first I thought were going to be, left out. So I've been really happy to see how the government has functioned with the interaction of the public there. So I promote citizen interaction whenever possible. I happened to see a commercial for our dam on TV the other day, and I thought that was also well done. It's a beautiful place, so can't miss doing it. But I'm really most excited about Mr. Peterson's presentation today, because now we're going to make all of Hearst as beautiful as Bullard's Bar, and we have lots of good things happening there. And as mentioned, it does matter to the citizens. I feel like Moses sometimes saying, "Let my people be dry," when it comes to localized flooding. And so I'm really happy about what's happening there. So thank you so much for everyone making that possible.
Thank you, Director Blazer.
So Peach Festival, I was there a little bit Saturday morning, but there must have been a drop off on Sunday because of the heat, because typically all the cobblers and pies are sold out. And it seems like most everybody had them left over. I think the Brick had quite a few cobblers left over too. Ellis Lake looks really bad if you've been by there. So I believe we're still waiting for the city to get to us with their consultant's report, because I have not heard anything, but that's the stage we're in. Yeah, okay. Just a little side note, I tend to watch the Tour de France, and mainly for the views of the surrounding countryside. I'm really impressed with the forests over there. I mean, they are lush and full, and how do they do that? I don't know, but it's... yeah, but anyway, that's all I got.
Thank you. And Director Vasquez, nothing? Okay. I just have one quick comment also about the Peach Festival. Just wanted to thank staff for being out there. I know it was very warm. I was there on Friday evening and again on Sunday or Saturday morning. I didn't make it by the booth on Saturday, so I didn't get a chance to see Willie. But when I went by on Friday, the employees were out there cheerfully engaging with the public, sweating a lot. But they were doing a great job. And so I just want to give them a shout out, everyone who helped set it up, helped man it. It was certainly kind of above and beyond given the temperatures. So thank you so much. And we have a closed session on the agenda. But before we move into that, we'll take a 10-minute break. So thanks.
Recording stopped.
Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com.